Now that the battle is over, we need to take a look at what needs to stay and what needs to get better for the Washington Commanders moving forward. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Commanders.
Your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into this Saturday episode of Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget that you can subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, and you can continue this conversation with me via text message by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. You get the first 2 weeks free to see if you like it enough to stick around, and hopefully you do. We have a lot of fun over there with Subtext, and enjoyed texting a lot of my subtexters during the game Friday night, and I look forward to continuing that trend all throughout the season. I'm your host of Locked On Commanders, David Harrison, credentialed member of the media, covering your Washington Commanders for Sports Illustrated's FanNation, here with you every Monday through Friday, and sometimes a Saturday. Tomorrow we're going to have a Sunday, just all kinds of craziness happening with the Washington Commanders, and of course that makes the Locked On Commanders a big ball of craziness as well. And I do appreciate you for coming through when you do, and every dayers, I greatly appreciate you for coming through every day on a consistent basis. Today's episode brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs, which helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job opening for free. Terms and conditions apply. On today's episode of Locked On Commanders, we're diving deeper into your Washington Commanders Week 1 preseason win over the Cleveland Browns with some surprises, some snap count observations, and more. But we're going to start this episode with our after-action review. Now, this is an episode that I do plan on doing into the regular season. This will be your day after game episode. I'll do some after-action review stuff. I'll do some press conference observations, and then we'll wrap it up with snap counts and surprises. So AAR, after action review, is something that I learned to do in the military. In the military, you do after a mission, after a training exercise, after an event, right? It's an after action review. You review the action after it's done. And what you want to do is you want to come away with 3 things to sustain, so to keep around, and 3 things to improve upon. Now, here in this show format and with all the stuff to dive into, we're doing 1 sustain, we're doing 1 improvement. So if you're a military guy out there or gal and you want to call me a cheater for only doing 1 of each, that's perfectly fine. I'm a civilian now. I can only do 1 if I only want to do 1. So we're going to sustain 1 thing here. And the thing that I want to sustain, you're not going to be completely surprised by it, but stick with me because I've got some data. I've got some quantifiable things to talk about. Smart quarterback play from your starter, Sam Howell. I think that's what we got on Friday night. 9 for 12. Sam Howell was 77 yards, a touchdown pass, no interceptions, no near interceptions, no fumbles, none of that craziness. 119.1 quarterback rating. I mean, when you're talking about a second-year quarterback getting his first start in the preseason, but his first start as the starter of an NFL franchise, I don't know if you can get a whole lot better than that, or if you should expect a whole lot better than that. Now, Howell's completion to tight end John Bates would have gone for at least 25 yards. Of course, he dropped it, and even if he didn't drop it, there was a penalty that would have called it back. More on that here in just a little bit. But if you want to count that in there, then really Sam Howell effectively facilitated his team 10 of 13 passes, 82 yards, and that sack potentially doesn't happen without that drop, without that penalty, and that puts the ball, if John Bates brings that in and there's no penalty, puts the ball at the Cleveland Browns 35-yard line, or even better, depending on how far John can run. Now, as a team, it happened, right? And you don't want to throw that away. It happened. You need to learn from it. You need to study it. But when you're looking at the quarterback play as a facilitator, as the point guard for this football team, it's hard to deny that Sam Howell put his team in position to be successful time after time after time. And really, that's all that we can ask from him at this point in his development, in my opinion. Something Pro Football Focus noticed that I wanted to share with you guys was that the Commanders' offense used 21 personnel, 2 running backs, 1 tight end, once on Friday. Never used it last season. Now, obviously, we got 2 different offensive coordinators, Scott Turner last year, Eric Bieniemy this year, but never used 21 personnel last season. 2 backs, 1 tight end. And if you're an everydayer, and if you've been an every yearer beyond the everydays, you know I have been pounding the table, screaming for 2-back sets in this Washington Commanders offense. This roster is built for 2-back sets, so we're already seeing it from Eric Bieniemy's offense here in the preseason. And they used 20 personnel, 2 backs, no tight ends, once, and only used that look 3 times all last year. And those 2-back sets that we saw last year with the no tight ends, fullback and a running back, which is what you're usually going to see, right? I do still want to see some AG and Brian Robinson, maybe some Curtis and AG, Curtis and Brian, someone in the backfield. So not getting everything that I want, but again, preseason week 1, so I'll take what I can get. It's a sign of more scheme diversity from Eric Bieniemy than we had under Scott Turner, and that's going to help keep defenses from dialing in on what this offense is doing, honing in on what Sam Howell is going to do, because if you have more looks, more personnel packages, then you can spread them out and you can keep them on their toes. And that's clearly what Washington is trying to do here. And I think it looked pretty good for your first dress rehearsal of the season. Now, during the press conference after the game, first of all, shout out to Sam Fortier and Nikki Javala of the Washington Post, the only members of the beat that traveled to Cleveland. So they had the exclusive press conference with Ron Rivera, the exclusive podium time with Sam Howell. They did a really good job. If you haven't caught the press conferences, I sent a DM out and praised them for the work that they did there. I mean, it's amazing, but that's preseason football. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, not all the resources can go to preseason football. So that's just kind of how it works. But Sam did tell them after the game, quote, "I thought it was good. Definitely did some good things out there as an offense. Definitely some things that we can improve on. But I think overall it was good." He continued by saying, "I thought communication was good. EB did a really good job. And there was a lot of things that I was proud of tonight," end quote. And for the crowd who maybe still, and the crowd is small, right? So it's not most of you, but for anybody out there who still thinks that maybe these players don't like Eric Bieniemy, when you don't like your boss, you don't call him EB, you call him Eric Bieniemy, Coach Bieniemy, Coach Eric, whatever you want to call him, but you don't call him EB, right? So just a little bit of an anecdotal thing to throw out there. Now, here's some data from Sam Howell. Here's where we get into the football nerd side of things. I'm a football nerd. Hopefully you're a football nerd. So Sam Howell completed 3 passes for gains of 10 yards or more. Those 3 passes, 2 of them came against cover 1 coverage. 1 of them came against cover 0 coverage. So cover 1, you've got a deep safety. Cover 0, you have no deep safeties covering the top. Those are the 3 coverages that his passes that went for 10 yards or more came against. Sam Howell also faced 5 or more pass rushers from the Cleveland Browns 5 times, and he completed 3 passes against those 5 looks. The biggest of those pass completions was the 26-yard touchdown pass to Jahan Dotson, which came against cover 1. So there was a 5-man rush, 5 or more. I want to say it was 5-man rush, cover 1 coverage from the defense, and Sam Howell able to exploit that for the 26-yard touchdown. His first time facing 5 rushers or more, so in theory a blitzer along with your organic pass rush. First time facing 5 or more rushers, he got the ball out quick against cover 1 coverage, hit Curtis Samuel underneath for a 10-yard gain. Second time, he was able to connect with tight end Cole Turner for a 7-yard gain. The third time was incomplete because the Browns defense guarded the middle of the field. So that Curtis Samuel pass, middle of the field, Cole Turner running through the middle of the field. Third time they run that cover 1 with a 5-man look, 5-man pass rush rather. They committed to the middle of the field. They took that away from Sam Howell. He didn't come off of it early enough, scrambled outside the pocket, threw the ball downfield to Curtis Samuel on the left sideline, but wasn't able to connect. His fourth time facing 5 or more pass rushers was 6 rushers, actually no extra man in to protect. So the pass rush came in quick. Zadarius Smith ended up being the free rusher. The Browns defensive end deflected the pass that was intended for Antonio Gibson in the flat. And the 5th time Sam Howell saw 5 or more pass rushers was a touchdown pass. So I think you see the evolution there of Sam Howell kind of getting comfortable with those 5 rushers and even 6 one time in his face. Howell was 5 of 6 pass attempts against 4-man rushes, which is the Cleveland Browns organic pass rush. One more note that I thought was kind of cool. Sam Howell threw 9 catchable balls on 12 attempts. All of those catchable passes were completed. Again, the drop by John Bates doesn't exist officially because of the penalty, but if you want to throw that in, he threw 10 catchable passes on 13 tries. That's a 77% catchable pass rate. That's pretty good for your first time leading a team in a new offense and in live bullets, a live opponent out there. So that's our first sustain of the new season. Let's see more of that from Sam Howell, from Eric Bieniemy, from this offense. But we've got an area of Commanders football that we want to see improved the most before the Baltimore Ravens game next Monday night. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Commanders is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, new potential hires can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available, and that's why you need to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job on LinkedIn Jobs and then add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you are hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy for you to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can prioritize quickly who you'd like to interview and who you would like to hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thanks again for being a Locked On Commanders first listen or view today and every day. Every day is, of course, I greatly appreciate you for coming through, especially on the weekends. Saturday episode here. We are back at practice tomorrow, so I will have a Sunday drop. Monday, we are back at Ashburn. Tuesday, Wednesday, we're in Baltimore. Thursday, we're off, but you know what? I'm probably going to drop an episode anyway. Friday, we're back at practice. I think Saturday as well, and then we're off Sunday. Monday night is the game. I'll keep you up to date. It's kind of hard to keep track of all, but there's a lot of football coming, so we're going to talk about all of it. We're going to continue with our AAR, and again, one area of sustain we already talked about: Sam Howell, smart quarterback play, efficient quarterback play. I want to keep seeing that. What do we need to improve on? The starting offensive line. You're not going to be surprised by this. The offensive line. Not a perfect day. I don't think anybody expected really a perfect day, but there were some critical and some glaring holes. Obviously, the offensive line needs to fix coming into next week against the Baltimore Ravens, and surely before the beginning of the regular season. Starting off with 2 critical penalties by right tackle Andrew Wiley, the veteran, and it's a little bit more disappointing when you consider that he's not only the veteran, but he's also the guy who's been in the EB system. He knows the scheme, he knows the plays, he's been doing this, so you kind of expect him to be a little bit more advanced in the process. First holding penalty came on a 1st and 10 from the Washington 43. So you're near midfield. It was a pass that was dropped by John Bates. Again, would have gotten the Commanders offense to about the 35, 30-yard line of the Cleveland Browns had it been completed and John Bates turned upfield. But even if he catches it, the penalty is obviously going to negate it. Now on the play, went back and watched it. Wiley wins initially in the play against Cleveland Browns defensive end Isaiah McGuire. So I think that's fairly important, right? Initially, he holds up Isaiah McGuire, gives Sam Howell about 3 seconds, and then about 3 seconds into the play, McGuire gets past Wiley's outside shoulder and starts in towards Sam Howell, who is still in the pocket. That's when Andrew Wiley grabs McGuire's inside shoulder, so it's his right shoulder as he's moving around Andrew Wiley, spinning him around. I mean, the back judge had no choice but to throw a flag there. You see a defensive lineman literally pirouette and turn away from the quarterback. That's going to be a hold every time, just as Sam Howell is making the throw. Now, Sam Howell honestly is going to look at that tape, and his quarterback's coach, his offensive coordinator, all of them are going to look at that tape, and they're probably going to tell Sam, hey, in the future, we need you to try to get through that progression faster, come off of that first read, see John Bates clearing behind the linebacker in front of the safety into open space and get rid of that ball a little bit faster. But certainly a bad ending to that rep by Andrew Wiley. Again, in the initial part of the rep, one I would say he won it, but didn't keep it the entire time. Then about 3 seconds in, everything kind of comes apart there. Second of 2 holding penalties on Wiley obviously came on the safety. That time going up against Zadarius Smith, one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. We talked about that in our pregame episode. That's a hard matchup for anybody. But Wiley kicks out really, really far. And look, Zadarius Smith had been kind of hitting that outside rush on him. So I think that's kind of why. And Zadarius Smith is a smart dude, probably knows, hey, eventually he's going to kick out too far. I'm going to take advantage of it. What's really kind of head scratching, and I'm sure they're going to talk about this in film study, is that Andrew Wiley actually has Alex Arma behind him as a backfield running back, and Arma isn't immediately going out for a route. He's actually staying in to help make sure that the pass rush doesn't get to Sam Howell. So as you watch Andrew Wiley kick out really wide, Alex Arma is actually kicking out wider than him in order to try to help him protect that outside shoulder. So in reality, if you know Alex Arma is back there as Andrew Wiley, what you should be doing is actually maintaining the inside part of that rush lane so that he can't get inside of you, because Alex Arma, as Alex does start to leak out of the backfield, Zadarius Smith hits Andrew Wiley with an inside move, takes advantage of all that space to the inside because of Wiley's extra kick outside. And you can actually even watch Alex Arma. Like, you see his body language. He's surprised how much wider Andrew Wiley is on that play and how much wider he has to get. So again, you've got that help there. You got to trust your teammate to be there and make that play. So that's something that they're certainly going to talk about, and something that hopefully, again, will get fixed. So, no harm, no foul. The team came away with the win, so you can learn from that with a victory in your pocket. But there are some other plays that the offensive line group is certainly going to look at. And I didn't go through every single one and nitpick every single bad play or every single lost rep, but I did want to highlight just a few here that stood out to me. The first run of the game, actually, Brian Robinson Jr. gets the ball stopped on what's supposed to be a B-gap run to the left side out of a shotgun formation. Charles Leno Jr., the left tackle, puts his head down, as he's engaging defensive end Chuck Wiley for the Cleveland Browns. Once he puts his head down, Wiley takes advantage of it, gets inside of his shoulder into that gap, and makes a stop on Brian Robinson for no gain at the line of scrimmage. On the play following that, following the sack, rather. So you go fast forward to the sack of Sam Howell. On the very next play following the sack, right guard Sam Cosmi gets beat pretty quickly off the line by defensive end Zadarius Smith. Again, one of the best pass rushers in the NFL, who got to Howell early, forcing a quicker throw than he wanted to with the play design. Because of that, center Nick Gates wasn't able to get out of his initial block and upfield to get the block that he's supposed to have, resulting in a 2-yard loss on the quick pass on that play. On a 2nd and 10 later on in the game from Washington's 5-yard line, this is right before the safety. The Commanders try to get Antonio Gibson the ball on a trap run through the A gap, but Cleveland Browns defensive tackle Jordan Elliott takes Chris Paul for a ride right into that sucker and blows it up, leading to AG trying to kick it outside where he's dropped eventually for no gain. Later in the scoring drive, now the good drive there, Chris Paul does end up getting beat quickly by defensive tackle Tommy Tagayi of the Cleveland Browns. Didn't really impact the play, fortunately, because the play call was a very quick pass that Sam Howell got out almost immediately. But any other type of pass drop, any other type of look, and that play is going to result in immediate pressure up the middle. Or if that's a run play, you're talking about a defensive tackle being there at the point of the handoff as quickly as Tagayi got off the line and beat Chris Paul. So by my math, we're talking bad losses, not just general loss, but bad losses. Charles Leno had one. Sam Cosmi had one. Chris Paul had 2. Andrew Wiley, the 2 holds. They all played 21 snaps, so that's 5% for Leno and Cosmi, 10% of snaps for Paul, and Wiley ended up in bad reps. Now, it wasn't all bad, right? There were certainly some positives, so I don't want to just leave it on the negative and talk about that. So on the one sack on Howell, the offensive line actually doesn't do a bad job. That sack actually isn't really entirely on the offensive line. Howell just can't find anyone in time, doesn't make the decision to run from the pocket until it's too late. I timed it as best I could. It took about 3 seconds from the time Sam Howell had the ball snapped to him until the defensive back comes in and gets the sack. Mike Ford combining on the sack with Mo Hurst. And most quarterbacks will tell you at about the 3-second mark, if you're not hitting a pass, you need to be getting out of the pocket, especially if you're mobile like Sam Howell is. So I think in the future, we'll probably see that internal clock get sped up just a little bit in terms of getting out of the pocket. So not really a plus play for the offensive line, but I would say that the offensive line did a fairly good job given what they were facing there on that sack play. That I would put that a little bit more on Sam Howell than I would the offensive line. On the 11-yard run, there's an 11-yard run off the left edge by Brian Robinson later on in the game. There were some really good blocks, not all by the offensive line, but I do want to highlight this play. Jahan Dotson starts it off by sealing the edge against Browns linebacker Ogbo Okoronkwo. Hopefully I said that correctly. De'Ami Brown helps lay down a block on cornerback Mike Ford, keeping him from getting into the pursuit lane, which is where Brian Robinson ran through when he got to the edge. Those 2 receivers laid down those blocks, allowed Charles Leno Jr. and Cole Turner, who was actually pulling from the right side of the formation, to get wide and downfield, laying a block on linebacker Jacob Phillips and forcing cornerback AJ Green III all the way outside to the perimeter to keep the play contained in field. If there's one complaint, it was really good blocking scheme. I mean, it was a really good play. If you have the opportunity to go back and watch that 11-yard run, a lot of moving pieces in there. Four guys really working in unison to really spring that play and help B-Rob get that 11-yard gain. If there's one complaint that I would make, it's on the left guard, Chris Paul. If you watch that, he's had an opportunity to get to the second level and put a block on Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, the linebacker for Cleveland. Doesn't really attack it, doesn't really go aggressive at it, and that's something that we talked about pregame, that he's been kind of criticized on the practice field for not being super aggressive. So I think that's another play where I think Juan Castillo, Travell Wharton, they're going to talk to him and say, hey, dude, like that's what we're talking about. You need to get in there and get that junkyard mentality and go hit that dude, because Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah ends up making the tackle. And if Chris Paul engages him instead of letting him go the way that he did, Brian Robinson might gain another five or more yards. I mean, honestly, if JOK isn't there, there's 2 DBs between Brian Robinson and the end zone. So DBs can get run over, guys. So who knows what happens on that play? At least 5 more yards, if not more. So that's going to be something that the coaches certainly are going to talk to Chris Paul about, I am sure. All right, so there's our after action review. That's how it's going to work. Sometimes we're only going to have one on each side. If I have time, sometimes I'll do 2 or 3, but as you can see, we get kind of detailed on these things. That's how I like to do it. So hopefully you guys enjoy some of those finer points of the sustain and of the improve categories. Both coming from the offense, but that's not going to be the trend. We will go offense. We will go defense. I just didn't want to force it. And right now, obviously, the offensive line is a huge point of focus for all of us. So let's dive deeper now into snap counts, and talk about what surprised me coming out of the Washington Commanders' first preseason win of the season against the Cleveland Browns. That's next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders. Snap counts and surprises from the Week 1 preseason win for the Washington Commanders, 17-15 over the Cleveland Browns on Friday night. Snap leaders from Friday night for the Washington Commanders on offense. Tight end Curtis Hodges led all offensive players with 24 snaps, playing on 39% of the offensive opportunities. Defense was safety Terrell Burgess, who played on 45 defensive snaps. That's 58% of the defensive opportunities. Special teams, linebacker Milo Eifler played 10 special team snaps, getting 36% of the work there. So those are your snap leaders. Again, Curtis Hodges for the offense, Terrell Burgess for the defense, Milo Eifler for the special teams. Some snap count observations. Wide receiver Kyrick McGowan was the only non-specialist to not get snaps on their side of the ball. So every defensive player that got snaps on defense. Every offensive player other than Kyrick McGowan got snaps on offense. So that's interesting. Something I might bring up at the next press conference. Just kind of ask maybe, what that signifies, or if it signifies anything. I don't know. It's just interesting to me that only one player from offense and defense didn't play on either offense or defense. Another interesting snap count observation, cornerback Tariq Castro-Fields, second-year cornerback out of Penn State, someone that I've mentioned has had a good camp so far, earning more reps. We talked to him here on the show last week or the week before. He led all cornerbacks with 35 defensive snaps on Friday, playing 45%. That tied with safety Jeremy Reeves, while Quan Martin, who sometimes corner, sometimes safety, I just call him a DB. He led all DBs with 37 defensive snaps, but also drew 2 penalties in the process. Certainly would like to see Quan Martin. He wasn't our improved category, but I would certainly like to see Quan Martin clean up a little bit of that. You want to be physical, but those officials throwing flags there, so hopefully he can learn from that and have a better outing penalty-wise against the Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens. Whew. Baltimore Ravens. Some surprises from Friday night's game. I did predict before the game that we would see 4 option plays from the starting offense, and we saw none. But we did see 2 during the course of the game. Eric Bieniemy did dial up 2 option plays, one from the second team, one from the third team. Both ended up in runs happening, and both gained yards, combining for 9 yards total on those 2 option plays. It's something, guys, we're seeing a lot of it in practice, so I really thought we would see it. I'm sure we're going to see more of it in the Baltimore Ravens joint practices. But hey, that's preseason. Maybe it's something that EB is trying to keep under his hat on how they execute their read options. Everybody knows read options is going to be there. Just how they're going to do it and some of the variations, something that EB is apparently not trying to expose too early to the rest of the NFL community. Also, I predicted that we'd see more blitzing on Friday than perhaps we're used to seeing. And on Friday, Jack Del Rio sent 5 or more rushers, with at least one of them coming from non-defensive linemen on 13 plays on Friday. So that accounted for about 26% or so of the defensive snaps. So, a good amount of plays there where more than just your organic down linemen are coming at the Cleveland Browns quarterback. And then finally, Cole Turner got 20 snaps on offense on Friday, more snaps with the first team offense than John Bates got. John Bates did get one more total snap than Cole Turner, but Cole Turner got more offensive snaps with the first team offense than John did with Logan Thomas out. We've talked about the potential of Cole Turner taking over that second tight end spot, or that second receiving tight end spot with John Bates' drop on Friday. That's certainly not going to help his case either. So we'll continue to kind of keep an eye on that. Don't know how much it really matters is from a grand scheme of things for the Washington Commanders, but if you're looking for a sleeper tight end that might get some opportunities, we all know Logan Thomas has been injured more in recent years than anybody would like. So if Cole Turner is the one getting more snaps in a very tight end friendly scheme that Eric Bieniemy is running, and again, Cole Turner 4 catches on 4 targets on Friday night, so certainly getting some work in this offense. If he ends up being the guy above John Bates, that might impact some decisions you make late in your fantasy drafts this coming season. Speaking of coming up tomorrow, I will be back at Ashburn for my first day back at practice, since I had to take a little bit of a break due to a family matter. Again, I appreciate all your guys' patience through all that. But look, we still got 4 episodes in this week, despite the fact that I missed 3 practices. So plenty to talk about with the Washington Commanders. You never doubt that. So I will be back tomorrow, Sunday afternoon, with you after another practice out in Ashburn. Our Howell Watch will continue as well, so make sure you come back for that. In the meantime, send your questions, comments in the YouTube comment section. Send them on Twitter. Email me at lockedoncommanders@gmail.com, or send them to me directly via Subtext by going to joinsubtext.com/lockedoncommanders. Get your first 2 weeks free, and then you can decide if you want to hang out like so many done. Everybody so far that's signed up has done their 2 weeks and they've stuck around. So I appreciate it. And hopefully that means everybody is enjoying it. As always, I want to thank you for making Locked On Commanders first listen or view of the day, every day, every day. I greatly appreciate you for coming through consistently like you do. Thank you so much for making me a part of your day and part of your football routine. Until we speak again, please be safe, be kind, and I'll see you next time for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.